Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Hello, this is Kinch, and today's guest is Julian Garfield. If you don't know him, you will if you're in his class, because you're probably not going to be too happy that this youngster is such a fast guy. This interview is great for so many different reasons. Whether you are driving a car, you're driving a kart, you have a kid that drives a kart, he talks a lot about a lot of different things. What I really like, some insightful things, were things I hadn't thought about. Really caught me realizing that on a junior kart, because of the power band, let's say being up high, he would definitely focus on keeping that kart in the power band by adding distance to make a larger arc and keeping his foot on the gas. Very insightful things. I had no clue, never considered that there's physical elements, and using physics, you can prove that the wider line sometimes works. Get this. He had 5 championships in a row, so he's tied like third most for the longest undefeated streak. Then he hops in with a permit into nationals 2 years ago with his mom riding, like right there next to him. He's third in DSP. This last year, second in CSP. Julian's a fast guy. He's a fun guy. It was a great interview. No matter what you're driving, what you're thinking about, I bet you pick something out of this that you can take and say, I'm going to try that as well. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think. Julian, how's it going?
Going great. How you doing, Kinch?
Hey, so far so good. We're actually cold out here in Denver. Have you guys finally got some cold weather out there?
Sort of. It's going back and forth. We had a couple, 30-degree days. Ski slopes still aren't open yet. We've got a 55-degree day that's not helping things, but I think it's supposed to start cooling down again this week. I don't know.
And tell us where you're at specifically.
Mount Airy, Maryland. So we're not too far from Baltimore.
Okay. Very cool. I kept hearing how warm it was out there. So because it's been warmer, have you all had any races at all?
No. Season ends normal, probably October to November. I know one thing a lot of the D.C. region members, we all do to keep in shape. We go up to an indoor karting track, Mid-Atlantic Grand Prix in Delaware, and we've been doing these 3-hour karting enduros. We're on teams, changing on the fly. It's so much fun, and we've got, of course, all the autocrossers and great personalities in there. So that's a lot of fun, but nothing other than that going on here until around March usually. So
you started off in karting at age 5. How do these guys compare when you go indoors to karts?
Well, it's definitely one thing we've noticed is I will admit my size helped me for the longest time when I would go up against people twice my size. I have a little bit of a better acceleration on most of them, but now I'm still running towards the front, trying to keep my qualifying positions up for the where we put the teams together by qualifying time. So the fastest person gets put with the slowest person. I'm still running up at the top, but not gapping everyone else like I used to. I think I've got more normal human weight now.
Yeah, so you started at age 5, and in this time frame, the first time they had to give you a special permit. Oh, no, that's for Pro Solo. So over these times from age 5, we'll go back there, but you've already accumulated 5 championships in both Pro Solo and Nationals, NJB and JA, I believe you told me.
Yep.
All right, so let's see. My memory of being 5 years old basically remembers a little bit of kindergarten. Talk to us about what you remember when you were back and got to start karting. Like, what was the thoughts back then?
Honestly, it's funny. It's probably, in some senses, not too different than what your memory is at 5 years old. I really don't remember all that much. Maybe, obviously, videos kind of bring it back a little bit, but I honestly don't have any idea how I could be a kindergartner and be handling these karts, because I personally don't even remember it that well. But I started autocrossing when I was 5, doing stuff with the DC region, and I've been out there pretty much every year since now, going through all sorts of different karts and so on and so forth. And then once I turned almost 8, like you were saying, I did my first Pro Solo down in Arkansas. I do remember that weekend pretty well. It was a cold and miserable April weekend, actually. I remember it was super windy. I was wearing jackets over my karting suit, which usually you're burning up in those things. But I do remember that pretty well.
Do you remember at all being hooked? I mean, at that age, my first pro solo, I finally was like, oh, I should go to one of these. I was hooked. That was the hook of all hooks.
Well, I do think one of the things, especially with the junior carts, that you don't really get to experience, and I've been getting to experience that more now than I've been getting into cars and everything else. But the pro solos, to me, were never the most exciting things because the carts, they do 0 to 60 in 40 seconds. You know, it's like there's no exciting drag racing launch you have there. You just kind of step on the pedal and kind of wave to the course workers at the first station. And I remember I used to be able to come back in and be like, hey, I saw you out of corner two, because my cart's still accelerating as I go down this long drag strip.
So you have the time to count all the workers and look at all the cones and
right. Yeah, you got plenty of time for that. But once the carts get up to speed, I mean, it's so crazy because now being in C Street prepared Miata, I'm only running the same times. It's really about the same times or a little slower than I was when I was in JA, and it doesn't feel the same at all. Everything feels like it's so much coming at you so much faster in the CST car. Everything I thought felt kind of simpler in the JA cart. I guess that just comes down to the size, but it's definitely very different way to get the same time on a course like that.
Well, yeah. What did the JA cart and driver weigh in total?
When I was running, they changed the weights around, but I was in a Yamaha KT100, which was a smaller two-stroke motor, so we were able to. I think they maybe made it a little bit of a heavier weight, and we were 305 pounds with the driver.
And now this CSP car that I should note you finished second at Nationals this past year in, that's also for sale as of 2016. What does that car weigh, ish, or if you're allowed to say exactly what they weigh?
We're one of the only, we were the only car out at Nationals that was running a hard top, and with the hard top we were 2,065 pounds without the driver.
Yeah, so like you're saying, from the cart to the car, you just have so much more weight and width to move around compared to the cart. Well,
and it is funny though, because when you put it into perspective, even the CST car is one of the smaller, lighter cars you can get out there on course. Especially with the big tires underneath of it. So even then, I've gotten to drive all sorts of stuff, and the CST car is definitely extremely nimble and light. But even then, it doesn't even compare to how quick and nimble the carts are.
Yeah. So it's got to be interesting. So I have a 5 and 7-year-old that are slowly getting into this because I haven't pushed them to start driving, but they've been out in the parking lot a little bit or the road, dead end road, nothing out there. Safe,
sure.
Very safe. So what do you remember about learning or not learning, and also what's your parents? How would they help you, or who would help you, coaches or what have you?
Well, I know first thing, before I even got into the little 50cc go-karts that we start what's known as JC now, before I even got into that, we have videos of me 3 years old. They were already setting up little soccer cones on the driveway that I was moving in and out of in the battery-powered carts, and I think that's honestly so important because right away, 2-3 years old, you can be teaching your kid, this is the gas pedal, this is the brake pedal. They see what it does. You go in and out of the cones. I knew which direction to go around the cones just from driving around on the driveway. So that's definitely gets you a huge jump start. So the only difference when you get into an actual cart is just the actual speed of it.
Good call. So I didn't go there so much with the electric, but what I definitely did a few years ago is I bought little cones and had the kids run around them and had them actually learn how, when you look at a cone, what side do you go to. So it's interesting that you learn that as well as obviously left and right to slow down and go, which makes total sense. So that's a good tip for anybody thinking about it. You can literally start on a driveway with an electric-powered anything.
Mm-hmm, most definitely. And then, like you're saying, you're doing with your kids. Then once we had the 50cc, the little JC cart, even then we were still maybe doing slaloms up dead end streets or something like that to get used to the dynamics of the cart. Or fortunately, like if after we were done teaching a school or something like that, we've got the lot to ourselves, we can kind of get some practice in there. So I remember that being very beneficial.
Yeah. So what credit would you give your parents for helping you out and getting you going or coaching you? Like I'm basically looking at this for other parents that are going to get their kids into this. What are the highlights for you? Or maybe not your parents, maybe other parents as well.
Oh, I owe so much credit to them. They've taught me so much over the years, and I think one of the things that helped me more than anything else is just pushing your limits all the time. And what I mean by that is I was from 5 years old, you've got your JC cart. 6 years old, we had already bought a 80cc motor that we had thrown on the kid kart chassis, and I was hitting 50 miles an hour, maybe 6 years old, whether it be out on a track practicing. I was always getting into the fastest thing I could as soon as possible. So when it came 8 or 9 years old, we got a 60cc shifter cart that I learned the clutch and everything else like that. So we were pushing it as early as possible. I was getting that kind of exposure to that speed, and I think that's definitely helped to develop the skills that I got that I use now.
Yeah, that makes total sense in that some of the books I've just read on sports and helping anybody out is to level up. Always play to level up. In your case, you basically did that in the autocross land. There's no defense. So how do you level up? Like you're saying, you get something more powerful and get used to that. Right,
and obviously for the rules, you can't just simply, you've got to kind of follow a procedure. But that being said, when you get the option to, if you can stay in JB an extra year or you can go up to JA, as far as your skill set goes, get up to JA, learn how to manage more power, and it does become different because the JB karts were. There's a certain point when the driver develops enough skill that I remember in JB, it didn't matter what the course was, as long as you set everything up just right, you could leave your foot pinned to the floor the entire way around the course.
In JA.
And JB.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that being said, I think the world formulas are a little quicker than the KT100 was in JB. But yeah, that was my ultimate goal. Pro Solo course is everything. If I could leave my foot pinned to the floor the whole way around the course, then I did something right. And there's a point when there's only so much you can do. The JA kart raises those limits. You got more power. You've got to think about things a little more. So getting into that kind of stuff as soon as possible was, I think, immensely helpful.
Oh, nice. So this is getting a little bit of technique stuff I always debate. Distance versus speed. So if in JB you could always keep it floored, you said if you set up. So how you would add some distance some places, I take it maybe, or what's your thoughts on that?
Of course, because in the end, the biggest thing that's going to separate the drivers, especially in a class like JB where there's not much power, and once the kid gets aggressive enough, they can leave their foot to the floor. It's all going to be about the least amount of resistance as possible. I'm not necessarily, and even cars too, I debate about this all the time. Personally, for JB in this application, you want the least amount of resistance to keep those RPMs up as much as possible, because especially in the two strokes that I ran, if you drop below a certain RPM, the kart just died, and it took forever to get back up into those higher RPMs. So managing that and maintaining as much speed as possible, even if you add a little distance, I think is more important.
And that actually, in that sense, that makes a lot of sense to me in the fact that if you get out a power band because you went tight and tidy and you used the brakes, to gain that back, you just couldn't do it, is what it sounds like you've learned.
Oh, of course, and it applies to cars as well, because I've walked courses with people, and I've definitely been in disagreements with whether it be co-drivers or other things that other people I've talked to, where I personally will prioritize in most cases to get on the gas as soon as possible, optimize that exit speed. Even if you have to give up a little distance on the entry, I think it's so much more important to be able to carry more speed on the exit of a corner, because that exit speed is going to carry all the way until the next significant corner. So when you're coming out with a higher speed, it's not just the corner that's affected by it. It's everything after until you're on the brakes again.
Gotcha. So would you temper that? Let's say if you have some corner with another corner after it, you would probably break that rule maybe and make sure you exit the second corner fastest?
Right. Well, yeah, that's obviously, it's going to be more important. And then the first corner, you would set up to get the best entry to the second corner to get the best exit speed. So that's where, and that's obviously that's all looking ahead right there, which we all know as autocross is the most important thing. And it's definitely for one of the toughest things as well. But yeah, you're always focusing on that last, if you've got two big offsets in concession, focusing on that last one before that fast run, because you see it in road racing too. It's the final corner before the front straightaway, essentially. You treat all of those corners like that, so that way you're coming out with the best exit speed possible. And I think it's worth sacrificing a little distance to get that.
Gotcha. That's right. I so agree that exit speed's key. I keep forgetting the book I read that literally said in pro racing it's all about the brake zone. They said he who brakes the best is obviously spends the least amount of time braking is going to be the fastest. But as that only comes out as, can you still get some kind of decent exit speed? They always said. So
right.
It's always key. Now, have you ever, because I think I do this in the Civic and STC or STS now, I literally would exit and want to keep my foot in it, the exit to come out fast, and actually feel like I added a few feet of extra distance just to keep the squirrel going inside there.
Oh, of course, yeah. If you have to sacrifice a little bit of line on your exit, but it means you got on the gas maybe 30 feet sooner, you're going to, especially when you're working with a power band that might be narrower than others or something like that, it's going to be that much more critical getting on the gas early. You learn to sacrifice things. That's with JA and JB as well. You learn to sacrifice your line a little bit. Maybe you do something that's a little weird in order to get on the gas that much sooner and carry more speed, because that's ultimately going to help you way more than keeping your distance and your line nice and tight.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad you said that, because I would have literally thought, oh, no, you're going to be tight and tidy. But as you said, if you get out of the power band, you can't make that up. It just doesn't work out physics-wise. You're assuming that's always the same, at least I was, and it's not. So that's where, okay, all of a sudden a little extra distance to stay at the right speed is very key. So here's another scenario for you. You mentioned practicing slaloms and such. Have you found any places, let's say you're coming to a slalom, that you can come into it hotter than you can maintain in the slalom? Do you dive in and break in the slalom? Do you try to break early? What are your thoughts?
I think at least when I'm teaching, you want to keep the inputs to a minimum while you're in the slalom, I think, because you've got enough back and forth motion going on that you want to come in under control. And once you start throwing in that forwards and backwards gas and brake inputs, I definitely think that you're going to upset the car, and it makes it a little more difficult. So if you maintain more of a constant speed as you go through the slaloms, I think that's more beneficial. That being said, you're coming in really fast. If you can dive into maybe the first, second cone, keep that speed under control, you still want to find that speed that you'll keep rather constant throughout. The other thing that's also another factor that you didn't mention is what's happening to the slalom. Is the gap staying the same, or is it getting tighter towards the end, opening up? Because that's going to affect how you handle the rest of it as well, I think.
Oh, you're very true. And that's where I tell so many people I care about how you enter the slalom, as in how close to the first cone. And then depending on what's after the slalom, just like after a turn we talked about, I like to try to make sure I'm accelerating out.
Right.
If I mess up in a place where I can accelerate at the end of the slalom, I want to make sure, if anything, I give up a little something in the middle or at the beginning. So once again, I can have that exit speed coming out of one, something I always key on.
Yeah, I really agree with you, and I couldn't emphasize it more especially when I'm teaching, is that first cone is so important, because we actually, at the schools we do in the DC region, we do a slalom drill that's maybe 10 cone, 20 pace slalom. So they're tight slaloms going all the way up the hill. And FedEx is a gigantic hill for anybody that's done the first solos. It's a huge hill. So we're going all the way up the hill, 10 cone slalom, turn around up at the top and go down the hill. So you've got the different factors of the hill that are also thrown in when you're naturally going to be picking up speed as you go down. Anyways, you see once you're off the first cone, and I see it all the time, it's off the first cone, then you're late on the second one later, and then you hit the fourth one. It always happens. So that's why that fourth one, or the first one, is just so important.
So how many years have you been coaching there locally? And then also, I think you mentioned you've done some Evo school coaching as well.
Right. So with the DC region, I've been instructing. This is going to be my third season as an instructor, I believe. But even before then, just from the experience, if it was a level 1 school or something like that, I couldn't drive the car, but I could write seat and might be able to help them with that as well. Also, even before that, as I would help with ride-alongs, since you don't have to be able to drive the car to tell people where to go, how not to get lost. So I would do that at the local events as well, even 11, 12, 13 years old. You get some interesting reactions from that. I actually had one person that he turned me down for a ride along. He probably thought I just wanted to go for a ride in his Factory 5. But I probably had no idea that I had been around for a while. But yeah, I definitely got some weird expressions when I would go. When timing would go, I think they thought it was funny. They would send me over there. Like, go give this guy a ride along. It's some guy that's never been there before, don't know what they're doing. 12-year-old walks over their car to show them what they're doing wrong. They probably didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, you need a special helmet saying, or special stickers like, yes, I'm fast. I know what I'm doing.
Well, it made it a lot easier when let's just say Danny or somebody else regular from the region would be standing there, an actual adult that could say he actually knows what he's doing. Otherwise, it's just me walking over with my helmet, offering to help, and they don't know any better.
It's not legal. You can't ride with me. You don't know what you're doing anyway. Oh, here's a couple of notes from what we've already said. So John Ames always told me, he gave me a bunch of good rules way back when one day in the parking lot. One thing he said about Evo schools, he goes, Evo School 1, you learn to look ahead. He goes, Evo School 2, further ahead. Guess what? Evo School 3, further ahead. And you mentioned that is the key, and I swear in solo, that's the biggest key there is.
Oh, most definitely. And one thing I definitely found, I got the chance to teach at my my first Evo school in last June, I believe. And one thing that I thought was very different from the way I'd been used to instructing is that we spent the whole morning on just the individual elements of the course and not looking ahead at all. And that was extremely difficult because I kept finding myself, and I had to stop myself. I wanted to tell them, just if you're thinking about it ahead of time, you'll be able to put yourself over here, but you're just focusing on the elements in the morning. And I found that was very different. It's a little tough to get used to, but I saw the benefits by the end of the day, for sure, but very, very different.
Unless you get the bad habit of only looking at your element, like, oh, this is pretty element. Let me dissect. Oh, what's next?
The morning is, I guess, it's more on memorization, just learning this is how you're supposed to handle one of these elements. And then once you start telling them you should be looking here at this point, you can put everything together a little better. But I definitely found that was very, very different from what I had done before.
And that's interesting. Do you think you just learned to look ahead just because you started so young? Is it something you ever remember focusing on?
Well, I think the autocrossing, just the technique, just from experience. But one of the things that I found, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you can get yourself in a junior kart at any point, you find a kid that's as tall as you. I don't know how tall you are, kids, but
a little too tall.
A little too tall. I know. My dad got the chance to drive. I think he drove Rachel Saunders' kart a few years ago at the pro finale after his shifter blew up. But honestly, everybody needs to try something like a junior kart on an autocross course at some point. I guess you can find a slow car that compares to it, with the exception of I learned so much about timing in the junior karts because I don't know, for anybody that might watch the junior karts on course, you set them up like a shifter kart in the sense of you're tossing the kart far before the corner in order to anticipate when the kart's going to bite. You're ultimately trying to keep your RPMs up, and that's the reason we do that. But you're planning ahead. You're thinking about, I need to toss the cart here. The cart will slide till here, and then the cart's pointed in the right direction here, right at your apex, ideally. So there's a lot of planning ahead that comes with driving those karts, especially when you're trying to keep as much momentum as possible in a JA kart, let's say. So that's where I think you develop a lot of good techniques from that.
Yeah, and this is one thing I want to get to. Of course, you left foot brake in a kart. What do you do in a car?
I didn't. I remember the first time I tried autocrossing a car, I dropped the habit pretty quick, and I don't do it at all anymore.
Okay.
It's something. Yeah, it might have been the first couple runs or something. It was completely foreign. Trying to do something with both feet. But yeah, now I don't feel like I need the left foot at all for braking.
I may challenge myself this year to quit doing it. Coming back to another topic, though, throwing the cart around, did you ever find yourself, instead of using the brake in a cart, scrubbing off speed by sliding?
That's exactly what you're doing. And because I can leave my foot on the gas when I'm sliding like that, my RPMs are still high, and I'm keeping them above in that power band because, like I said, the KT100s, they're a bit different than the World Formulas, the junior karts that we see now, because there's, like I said, nothing down low. And it's a pretty narrow, high-end, high RPM power band. So if you can keep the cart up in those RPMs, then you're going to reap the rewards tremendously.
Yeah.
So that made it super critical. There's probably not as much pitching required in the World Formulas, but I've driven them and it's still the same. You want to carry that momentum, and therefore you're pitching that cart ahead of time, leaving your foot in it, and really it's mostly just resistance that you're using to slow down just a little bit for the corner.
Yeah, because like you said, you can keep your foot planted. So I did a little bit of indoor karting, I don't know, a handful of years ago now, And it was amazing to realize you had to lift that back wheel to get those things to turn.
Anyone that tries to set up a cart that comes from cars, and that's where if I can, I always try and offer some advice to the parents of the junior carts or the junior carters, because the parents coming from cars, unless you spend a lot of time researching and understanding what these carts do, everything is the opposite. It's actually pretty unbelievable. Yeah, it's like you're saying, lifting the axle to get grip, it just seems kind of backwards almost.
Yeah, but yet you were probably doing that even though you were sliding around, right? You were pitching the car to get that off the ground, or no?
Well, you're actually, I mean, at least in the solo environment, and even then, that's completely different from when you're racing carts on the track as far as your setup and everything else. But I would set up the cart very loose. So I would make it, in order to set it up loose, you make the rear track wider so it doesn't pick up the wheel as easier, because if it picks up and bites, then you're probably going to bog the motor, and that's more resistance, and it takes longer to accelerate again. So you set up. I would do a wider. You make the rear track wider to make it harder for that inside wheel to pick up.
I'm not sure how many businesses you have or want to have, but here's one right here: consulting for other parents of JA, JB, JC. I found it. There you go. I'm not even a partner unless you need one.
I wish there was a larger market for it. We'll have to really work on the junior program to get make that a business that I can sustain.
Yeah, that's worthwhile sustaining, let's just say. So that's interesting. So now you don't left foot brake, and something I've realized that I haven't done much of because I left foot brake so much, I'm going to blame having a turbo car years ago, is that I find that I brake or accelerate, but I don't use the lift. Because I don't lift, I can just add brake even while I'm still adding gas. So that's something I think, I'm not sure if you notice that coaching or not, but I don't necessarily always let the car rotate, being a front-wheel drive car I'm usually in, by just lifting. Do you implement a lift, obviously, to get the Miata to move at all?
Well, I guess it kind of depends, along with the looking ahead and how critical that is. It depends on what's coming up next and how tight the corner you're in and how tight the next corner is. But using the brakes rather than a lift it's a more dramatic form of doing the same thing. You're shifting all that weight to the front in a front-wheel drive car. You're gonna end up rotating the back end, and it's gonna be far much quicker when you're using the brakes. Well,
let me continue with that. I actually left foot brake to keep myself from spinning. Most people think my car's loose, but because I'm always just touching a little bit, somehow it settles the car down. Maybe I'm not hitting it hard, but I'm using my left foot to actually stabilize the car.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if it's a crutch or not, but I think I miss out on that lift.
That's so usually, and it's interesting finding out when I co-drive, when we were co-driving the CSP car with my dad. In general, I prefer a more responsive back end. So I like when I lift off the gas, I want something to happen. I want something to happen right away. I don't like to be patient. I'm not as much of a fan of cars that push. That being said, front-wheel drive cars, when you expect all of them to push, I really enjoy driving front-wheel drive cars as well. And I think they're very I almost want to call it like an on-off switch, as far as typically when you're on the gas, the car won't turn. And when you're on the brakes, you're off the gas, the car will turn. So you can definitely work with that to your advantage. But going back to what you were saying, I definitely prefer a car that things happen right away. I like the rotation. I would rather take a car that oversteers over one that understeers going into the corner.
Yeah, because obviously you can handle that. I think a lot of people probably scrub off speed and they're wasting too much time, or it gets too loose for them. So I got to temper everybody thinking about, I'm going to do it just like that. Realize that each person has different skills, and I'm glad I have a loose car because, yes, at times if I do happen to just lift, it'll rotate for me. But some people I realize, I'm going to set a car up just like that guy. Can you drive like that guy? So I would tell some people until you get to a certain level. Well, maybe. Would you tell people maybe to set up loose and learn it?
I mean, it's really more importantly, you want to set up, like you were saying, you want to set up a car that drives to the way that you drive it. So ultimately, I think along with a carrying speed, looking ahead, everything else, you got to be comfortable in the car. That could come down to your seat position, everything else. If you're driving uncomfortably, then you're not going to be able to drive to your full potential. So I would say first, I would say most importantly, you want to set up the car the way you like it, because
Okay.
but at the end of the day, I think that's going to be more important.
Cool. I agree. I think it comes down to so many drivers I see, either they're too aggressive or they're not aggressive enough. It's like they don't know how to play with that line of, okay, I'm just barely over the maximum grip. I'm just under it.
Right. And I do think you could set a car up and say, this is the way I'm going to teach myself how to drive, and eventually you'll get it. But I don't see any reason to try and make yourself adapt unless you're doing something really, really awful and you're trying to quit a bunch of bad habits. I don't see any reason to try and set up a car for someone else and trying to teach yourself how to drive like that, because everybody does have a different style. And as long, at the end of the day, if you're seeing the results from it and you're improving and everything else, there shouldn't be any reason to change it.
Good call. Good call. I like the advice. So you look ahead. Obviously, it's the key. How much do you walk the course?
Typical local event. The only walk that I'll actually do is when I do a novice walk for new people. I'll try and throw in some helpful tips for people going out there for their first time, but that might be the only walk I manage to get in a day. But when we go to national events, let's say pro solo, maybe before Saturday morning, I might get 3 walks on each side, something like that, and then maybe do one more if I'm still struggling with an area after the first session or something like that. But I try not to overthink things a little too much. I think that even in a national tour setting, your first run is going to teach you more than anything you'll get out of 20 course walks.
Good call.
So ultimately, after that first run, ideally I got to know, I should see what happened, see what I did wrong, and then the second run you fix everything. Now that sounds, I guess, easier said than done, but that's definitely where a lot of seat time up until those points when you can get to a national setting and be like, I know I did this wrong. Next run, you just go and fix those areas, and you might end up with a 98% good run that you're sitting on for your second run. So that's the way I kind of like to approach things. So maybe, I mean, nationals, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to do maybe 5 or 6 walks on each tour course to just make sure I don't want. While the first run is going to help me with most of the things that the car is doing, everything else, the last thing I need to be doing is learning the actual where is everything going on the first run. You want to leave the first run really to only what's the car doing here and what's it doing here. I'm not trying to guess that ahead of time. I'm really only just trying to figure out where I'm going on those course walks.
Okay, so you walk the course locally or even at nationals. You just want to make sure you know where to look, basically.
Right, and naturally, I definitely find myself, I'll be looking through the corner as I'm walking through, and now you're looking. Everything's a much slower speed, of course, so you have much more time to do that. But you're getting used to those visuals. Looking from here to there, you kind of have an idea of what that's going to look like before you even get there. And that's where you spend a lot of time, like I said before, you pace out those slaloms to know. It's all the things that you're not necessarily going to notice when you're driving that you can prepare yourself for ahead of time, because when you only have 3 runs, you want to be as prepared as possible. So
what do you note if you walk it a couple times, are you noting anything that looks odd, or what are your thoughts if you're going to walk it a couple times?
I think the most that I really do, like I said, is going to be, I'll look for critical cones. If you've got 3 or 4 different apex cones in a large sweeper, you know which one, you can look through the corner and know which one is most important. Or like I said, in slaloms, you're kind of pacing it out. There's nothing, I wouldn't say there's anything that, I don't know. I mean, if there's elements that are really, really tricky, I'll probably take a little bit of extra time to look at them. But ultimately, it's going to come down to how the car is going to drive through it. And like I said, that first run really teaches you a lot.
You know, I'm in agreement with walking the course very few times, sometimes locally none. If I design a course, once I set it up, I have to do a safety walk. That's going to be it. I keep trying to challenge people. If you don't think you're looking ahead, don't walk the course. I said, if I walk a course and memorize it, if I memorize a course and I dare tell myself to brake somewhere, I'll go out there and drive it and brake for no good reason instead of just looking ahead to know. So I definitely agree with that. Do you? Go ahead.
Well, I guess going on with what you said, one of the things I noticed is after, whether it be one of our region schools or the Evo school or anything like that, you notice by the end of the day, the students they're getting really good. They've got these elements nailed down. What you have to remind them, though, is next time you go to one of these events, you only have 3 or 4 shots at it. So picking up on these things right away is that's where the experience comes in. I think that's where kind of developing that over time, knowing when you look at it, you kind of get an approximate idea of what you're going to be doing before you even get there. And that's why looking ahead is so important. You develop those skills of knowing what's going to happen before you get there, which is obviously for somebody new sounds insane, but now when you've been doing it for a while, you get used to that. I'm sure you can attest to that as well.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. How would you describe your eyes as you look around as you're driving the course? I always try to tell people, I remember teaching or riding with somebody and saying, it's a 180, look over there to the exit. And she turned her head and looked at the exit, and she never looked back at anything else. So I was like, oh, but I scan. So I scan ahead, and I come back, and I scan ahead. How would you describe, as you drive, what you do with your eyes?
I 100% agree with you, because if you're just setting yourself on the exit of the corner without, you still have to. It's kind of unrealistic, I think, if you ask me. If you're entering a corner and only looking at the exit, I think that's a little unrealistic, and I feel like that's going to be the way you're going to be adding more cone penalties to your times by not scanning. So you kind of set your eyes on that exit point, and yeah, I definitely agree. There's a constant scanning going on, but you always kind of have that focus on the exit even while you're entering. So I don't think it's once your eyes go, there's never going back. I think there's definitely a lot of scanning going on.
It's like, hey, look, I looked ahead, and then I looked further ahead, and
right.
I forgot to. I tell people, I said, you'll see me move before I'm going to hit a cone or avoid it because I'm watching it. I'm not sure if it's a good or bad habit, but I notice if cones are in the box, if they're twisted in the box, because I'm scanning back as I come up to a cone, I look back at it, and then I go back up. And
right.
some people are amazed at that, but I do that just to know where I'm at exactly. Where am I?
Yeah, I know. I've definitely, even worse than that, I've caught myself looking in the side mirror or something like that, or looking over my shoulder after a big corner to see, did I hit that cone? Because that's ultimately going to determine how I drive the rest of the run sometimes. So once you get
guilty as charged.
right. So you're that's definitely it can be a concern sometimes, but I know probably not the best thing to do, but it does really determine how you end up taking the rest of the run if you know you've already coned and you got to teach yourself something.
What would you tell people to do to look in a slalom? Like, what do you tell them if they're coming in a slalom? Do they look straight down the whole line, or are they still scanning?
I think it's like you're saying. It's very similar to the way you approach a corner. You're looking essentially the whole time. You're looking down that line, but you're still kind of scanning back and forth to be completely aware of what everything looks like. And that first cone, obviously very important, but after that, you really are looking down that whole line. I think. I would say it's kind of like difficult to say you're scanning in a slalom because everything should be in your line of sight. So I don't know if you call it scanning because
I only brought it up because somebody's like, you need to look in the whole line. I'm like, I don't think I've done that. So I've done it a few times, and I guess what I'm doing, yes, I'm scanning up to the next cone, but to know if I can go faster or slower, I always have to know which line I'm on in between the cones as I come up to the next one. So am I behind?
Right.
Am I ahead in the slalom? Can I go faster? That's where I think, once again, you always have to check up. Where am I at? Am I on the right line? What adjustment can I make? Can I go faster, slower, or keep the same speed?
Right. That's ultimately what it comes down to, and I steal this from my dad all the time. I think one of the best, I quote it all the time, it's the best autocrossers aren't perfect. They fix their mistakes the fastest. And I think that's really important because we're not, especially when you only have 3 or 4 runs, you're not getting a perfect run. It's just there's so many things. You could be 2 inches off the cone versus 6 inches off the cone. You know, that could be considered a little time lost. So it all comes down to understanding, I was a little far off that cone, so I have to adapt to end up not losing more time on the next one. So that's why I absolutely use that all the time when I'm teaching, because getting that unrealistic expectation that you have that we all the top guys run the perfect lap times, it doesn't happen.
And that's a great quote. What I kind of summarize most of this as, he who's on the best line the most often at the best grip or the maximum grip is going to be the winner. And that's never, like you're saying, it's never perfect. I went back and looked at some of the national runs I had that were the fastest, and I was like, wow, I was off that cone like a foot or two. Usually I'm right on one of those. But as you mentioned for the karts, if you're maintaining the maximum grip and that line that's a little bit larger, at least I was at the maximum grip, so I wasn't giving up by going tight and tidy. You can always do that. I think people can get pretty quick being tight and tidy, but then you have to really make sure you're at the maximum grip to become the upper echelon for sure.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of factors, and of course, then you're throwing in nationals pressure as well. That you cone your day away and it's over. So that's a whole other element that's thrown in there on top of. So when you're looking at your runs back over and you're like, man, I was a foot off there and a foot off there. Also, got to keep in mind you were also doing that because you don't want to lose before you can even go on to day two. So.
You're right. And if you're getting a degree in psychology, let me know. I might need some help. Maybe somebody would say, that's where mentally. I mean, I've led day one at nationals several times and lost. So I know about the mental pressures, and still that's one big thing. I'm reading lots of books, and some of it's on mental stuff, and yes, can you get yourself back in that same, for me it's almost like I'm out here having fun, I'll walk the course once or twice and go. And
right.
hope the car doesn't break or what have you. So that's where a lot of people, I realize, no matter if it's a nationals event or anything, they seem to put that extra pressure. And unless that helps you, you got to find a way just to, hey, this is another event, another run, another chance.
I think the best way, at least the way I look at it, is I try and treat every event I go to as if it's nationals. I think if our local events, they have 4 runs, I want to try and do the best I can in 3 and see if my 4th run, see how much I pick up time. If I pick up a second on my 4th run, then I know I left too much out there on my first 3. So I'm always trying to keep myself in that mental state. So when I go to nationals, I'm still handling everything the same way. At least that's the way I try and go about it.
Yeah.
Again,
I think you're absolutely correct. That's the best approach mentally.
Yeah, I think that also you could argue easier said than done, where maybe at the end you still know it's a local event. But I'm definitely not happy when I cone away a local event, because I know I'm trying to treat it with as much seriousness as I can. It also helps to have a good co-driver on my toes if I am making mistakes. So.
Oh, true. Yeah, for that pressure. That's one thing John Ames always said. Don't ever look at times. And several times at nationals, I've not looked at times. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm up or down, because if you're racing me, you can't play defense. I can mentally play my own defense against myself, but I have a challenge of improving sometimes. I'd like to hear from you. In 3 and 4 runs, do you usually take off time? Do you ever sit on your first run time-wise?
Never usually the first run. I think I'll usually find I think my nationals times were actually like the gap from the first to the third might have been rather similar. It could have been I'm trying to think back now. Maybe 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds from the first run to the third run.
Okay.
And I will notice, depending on how I felt I drove, if local event we get that bonus 4th run, sometimes I might pick up a 10th, sometimes I might be a little slower, sometimes I might pick up a 0.5 second. Or I know there was one event this past season that I picked up a second on my last run, and I'm like, that can't happen, if I'm leaving that much time out there. So there's definitely I use that as a gauge, though, to kind of check myself how I'm doing even at local events.
Yeah. Yeah, can you even take off more time? If so, somebody at nationals will have done that in the first 3 runs. So let's review what you said you do. When you come back from a run, you make that first run, you kind of know what the course is. Do you mentally then review a couple things that might have bugged you or a couple things the car did? Take us through that.
Yeah, I would say, I guess, if we're at nationals, first run, you come in. Personally, I don't know if I really care if my first run is clean all that much, because in the end of the day, I think if you're sitting on your first run, then you're leaving so much time out there. Somebody, like you said, somebody else has run that good run. You're going to be so far back for day 2, it doesn't matter. So even if you cone on that first run, it doesn't really matter. I think you push it. You try and learn as much as you can in that first run. You maybe try some things that you were thinking about during your walks, see how they panned out, and then the second run is about fixing those mistakes. What you think about what went right and what went wrong. There's let's just say I come in from the first run and there was 3 different spots. I'm like, that was awful. I slowed down way too much. I could have carried way more speed here. That spot, I went too deep and I didn't get a good exit. So take maybe 3 mental notes, 4 mental notes, go back out there, and you keep those in your mind as you're driving. And usually that's where a lot of your big time drops are going to be. It's those big spots that you weren't expecting. And I know when I taught that Evo school last summer, I remember Sam Strano saying that you never want to be surprised. And there's going to be, after one run, there's definitely going to be a couple spots that you're a little surprised. You're like, wow, I shouldn't have broken as much there. So there's going to be a couple spots where you're a little surprised. Second run is where you kind of clean things up a whole bunch. And then second run, I think definitely needs to be clean, because you don't want to go into your third run sitting on either your first run or a dirty run that you're trying to make up for in the third run, because that's a lot of pressure, especially if you're day one and you're still trying to keep yourself alive for day 2. So second run, even if you have to give it 98%, you just fix the things you did wrong on your first run, stay off the cones, and then you can go into your third run with a solid time and kind of push those limits, get it closer to the cones, everything else for run 3.
Yeah, I like that thought. I probably don't think to try too much on the first one, but literally I found myself last couple of years going, wow, how about you improve off the first? I mean, I guess it was more like 8 or 9 years ago. After day 1, I led nationals on my first run. And I want to beat myself up for that still, because I'm like, how can you not improve with 2 more tries? So that's where I think what you said is what I used to do better at, and I guess maybe I still do. I'll make a run and come back and go, okay, what are the couple of things I want to improve on? Right. And that should be, for me, almost, it's not like trying to go faster. That's never worked for me. It's literally just do the same thing. Somehow it's almost like I need to erase the fact I win, except for look at these 2 spots and pay attention there. And that's where I marvel. I want to learn and be the guy that goes, oh, yeah, I can walk the course, and have a clue that it'll help me.
Yeah,
instead of walking once or twice.
Out of curiosity, have you ever used the SoloStorm, the data acquisition?
Not that one. I've used TrackMate because SoloStorm didn't work in the car this year. So I have benefited from at least looking. But go ahead.
We hadn't picked it up until this season. My dad and I were using it all throughout the season, and I used it in 2014 with John Vinabas in his DSP car. That's definitely something, especially when you have a co-driver, very, very helpful in order to see, wow, you actually carried 4 miles an hour more through that corner. You can go out on your next one, and keep in mind you got to carry a little more speed, because the SoloStorm, while you know when you make obvious mistakes, but there might be some things that you're not necessarily noticing that that the co-driver's picking up on, and you can go out and fix that. It's kind of a step above what I was talking about in my nationals runs, where rather than doing it by feel, you have data to back up spots you may not have even been thinking about, that you can carry more speed, or you went too deep in and you saw that you were now 5 mile an hour left on the exit, for example. So that's where the data I found has been pretty helpful. If only we had enough time to really analyze it a little more between runs, I think it would be nicer.
They need to have personal coaches out there for each of us going, okay, I just analyzed this all for you, and here's your keys. Top 2, top 3.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I must admit that I like to be the first days, because that way people don't have other people's data so much. I'm like, no, since I'm not looking at data, let's have nobody have data. That's just
right.
me hoping. Look at this last year, I'm like, true. Good, no one can pull data. All right.
Right. You don't have the videos or anything like that. You're all kind of going in the same way.
Yeah, I find that watching people's videos is not for me, because once again, it's like I'm programming myself to do stuff that maybe not even my car can do. So I once again, I try not to do any of that. I'm like, nope, I know how to drive. Can I just have the confidence to do what I do and leave it at that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely found, I don't know about videos all that much, because the only thing that I think you might learn from it is, wow, that's a lot tighter than I thought it was. When you finally see a car, you probably pick one similar to your car that goes through it, and it seems like it took a lot more effort or something like that. So you can it's again a couple more little hints that you have before you go out for your first run, something you may not notice when you walk it, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. But I don't know if it's all that critical to actually have video of it before you go out there. and I can't say I look at videos before I do my nationals runs.
Yeah, I know some people do. Tell me this: do you go out there and watch other people to see if there's places that people are hitting lots of cones and such? Every once in a while, I will do that to see if somebody locking up their brakes, or a lot of people, not just one or two. Sometimes I'll actually watch to say, hey, is there something I missed out there when I walked the course a couple times?
I think I wouldn't say I've gone out of my way to do anything like that, but it was this past year's pro finale. I think was the first time I'd actually worked out on course for a national event. And that was definitely interesting. And of course, you're out there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, or maybe even longer, since stuff breaks at pros all the times. You definitely get to watch different approaches and all different kinds of cars. So that was something different for me. I don't know how beneficial that really was, because everything is so different, and you know your own car better than everyone else, and they're going to be doing different things for their cars as well. So you might get a little from it, but I don't know how helpful I actually found that when I did it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I used to work courses a lot, and I haven't as much lately. But for instance, that Pro Solo course, I couldn't figure out what to try or not try. I'm like, should I be tighter? There's not very many features here. What am I going to do? I almost got into the mental game of what can I try to do to beat the Miata? I literally was like, I don't know what to do on this course. It seemed wide open to me.
Right. And you've got, I guess, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, in STS, we had the Miata, and maybe he's out your direction. And then CRXs and Civics are all in the same class this year.
Right. And that's a really fun class to watch. And I definitely, I don't remember what happened in STS this past year, but I was hearing so many things, for some reason, I have no idea why, that people felt that the Miata was no longer competitive in STS. I don't know where they got that from. What kind of car won this year? I don't remember who won.
So the Pro Solo was won by Ben in a Miata, and then Nationals, Jason Frank won in a CRX. That's right. And the second place was a Miata. Is how it went.
Right, and I thought it was the funniest thing, because I was hearing this for some reason. It was last spring, and I'm like, didn't the Miata win it was the 2014 the Miata won in STS, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But I do like watching that class, because they're two very different cars. Both a lot of fun to drive, and they're very comparable with each other. And I don't know how after 10 years of running together, they could all of a sudden become uncompetitive, because I think those cars are all wrung out as far as they can go per the rules at this point. There's really nothing to be learned from them. But yeah, I really enjoy watching the variety that you guys have there.
Yeah, well, you got to realize, as soon as they combined, most everybody with a Civic sold their Civics. So literally, all of a sudden, Civics are not fast. Well, third and fourth place were Civics, and I feel like had I not coned my first run, which it hit in the easy part of the slalom on the West course, I was somewhat fast. And I was like, oh, I can take off half a second, because I knew two places I really screwed up. So I realized a Civic can still win also. So it is funny how everybody says, oh, only one car or the other. Now, what I did try to tell Howard, or tell people, is like, if you had a Miata class and a Civic CRX class with a minimum weight, you would have 40 or 50 Miatas, and you'd have 40 or 50 Civics and CRXs. But people start thinking, oh, one can't compete with the other. And they start selling them, and unfortunately. So I'm like, I wouldn't mind having separate classes, because I think you'd have a ton of these older, cheap cars. But once again, like you said, they're competitive, and they're fast, and they're fun.
Yeah, and I cringe at your idea, because the last thing I want to see is more classes. I know. I wish there was a way to consolidate some of these classes. I don't know what's going on with I guess STP now for the pony cars, and that to me sounds exactly like CAM, which we'll also have. So I don't know. I would definitely love to consolidate the classes, but that being said, I do have sympathy for the people that have built the cars for said classes, and then they have nowhere to go, because especially, I mean, I can't imagine if street prepared or something like that does go away entirely, these cars are really not good for anything else without major adjustments, because they're purpose-built autocross cars. You've got to either take them to another class or completely change their purpose before you can do something with them.
Yeah, once you start cutting fenders, it's kind of hard to go back.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Now, I should mention I have a Chevy Sprint Turbo FSP car somewhat for sale because I doubt I'll drive it this year, and I don't think Van is.
Are you telling me you have a Chevy Sprint Turbo that Van Townsend doesn't own?
Yeah, you're correct. Although Van this year or this past year bought 3 for spares, yet already had 2 spares. So we've got lots of Chevy Sprint Turbos. Lots.
I would have thought you would have all the existing ones left. I'm really shocked to hear that.
Yeah, just don't go out there. There are forums and websites dedicated to these things. Although when we post stuff up there, all they care about, they might put Megasquirt on them, but it's just to be cool. They don't race them. There's very few people that race them, but a lot of them mod them out for better gas mileage. It's
really?
Yeah,
wow.
we're out there looking up information. We found some people that are very knowledgeable, can help us figure out things. Yet ours probably had a boost leak or something. Van realized, I'm slower than H-Stock in these straights. I'm like, yeah, you got to check some of So literally, yeah, if somebody needs a few of those, one of those, part of one of those, we've got literally 6 of those things. 6. I can't believe I'd admit that, but yes. I keep thinking I either need to sell it, find somebody that wants to build it, because I doubt I will drive it. I'm going to stick with the Civic again and see if I can actually get the fast shocks on and learn how to adjust them. So are you somebody that goes and makes shock changes, anything else setup-wise?
I've been trying to I knew the carts inside and out from running them so long, but transitioning into cars has definitely been, as far as setup goes, has been a little, kind of difficult for me. I'm definitely not the not the best person when it comes to making shocks and tuning adjustments. I have learned a lot, and I feel like it doesn't take me too long to kind of get used to the car I'm working with. But bouncing, I don't think I could take a run in someone's car and be like, this is what you need to do with your shocks, because I haven't spent enough time in the car. So I've been learning, and I get the dynamics of it. I've been talking to a lot of people over the past year now that it's become more relevant to what I'm doing. But mainly working with the bars, springs, rebound. We got the double adjustables on the Miata, so it wasn't probably until the second half of this season that I've really gotten used to what to do with the car when I want it to feel a certain way, and actually saw the results, which is a big part of it too. If you're making changes and not really noticing any difference, I feel like you're not really getting anything accomplished. So I've definitely noticed a huge difference second half of the season. It took me a little bit to get used to it, but now I've found myself making more effective adjustments.
Yeah, what you said there is so key. I came from stock and Integra for years and years and years with double adjustables that usually I couldn't tell when you changed them. So therefore, I quit changing them. Air pressure did a much bigger deal, especially in the rear of that car, than any shock change I could ever do. I asked David Fouth, hey, what'd you do? Okay, I'm going to set them to that and leave it. So I've never been the shock guy. I told myself this whole past year, of course, I never put Jeff Long shocks on. I'm like, I'm going to get these double adjustables on there and play with them. Well, I didn't even put them on. So this year, I'm going to put them on there and see if I can tell a difference at all, any.
Well, I know especially with the Civics, we've got Brian Carwin in our region, and he was a huge help for, very smart guy, really helping me with the tuning of our Miata, just giving me a better understanding of what the changes I'm making are actually supposed to be doing. And I would be able to go out I remember it was the middle of one of the Wilmington Pro Solos. I was talking to them a whole bunch and making changes, and I really saw that difference. And once you don't really understand what it's doing until you can feel it. That's what I've noticed.
Yep.
Somebody can tell me all day that if I'm taking rebound out of the car, that it's not going to snap around as much when you're turning in. Until I actually feel that, I'm not going to have a good understanding of that. But I was actually noticing those differences more so over this past summer, and kind of getting a better feel for that. So I definitely think I'm learning that as I go. And like I've spent 2 seasons in cars, autocrossing with the shock adjustments, and even then, the whole first season, John Vitterboss, he's always making changes with that car. He knows what he's doing, and I just drive the way he's got it set up, and try and keep up with him. But
so, what other tips would you have for people? Are video games any good? Obviously, you karted a lot. Track time. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, as far as video games, I know the only game I'm on right now is Gran Turismo 6. We actually have a Gran Turismo Autocrossers Facebook page. We do all sorts of stuff, and recently they added to the game where you can design your own track. unfortunately, that doesn't include cones on parking lots, but I have made some courses. I have made some really, really tight, narrow courses that are autocross speeds, and I kind of had to come up with my own rules. If you drop wheels off in the grass, you coned, that kind of thing. But so you kind of started to make some challenges and stuff that can be a little helpful. I mean, you still have, when you've got nothing better to do over the winter, you're still making those precise yet fast inputs, and they do feel rather similar. I think one of the things I've noticed for video games that helps more than anything else is the mental pressure. And that's whether you're actually racing wheel to wheel or you're just trying to run your fastest laps, you still have to make a lap or several laps in concession without making mistakes. And I'll admit, it doesn't matter if it's a bunch of guys I don't know off the internet and I'm racing in unrealistic cars, unrealistic tires, whatever. My heart's still pounding before the beginning of these races because I'm going to treat it like it's I'm not trying to punt people off the track, and while other people do that anyways, I try not to do that. So the mental pressure, I think, has been is pretty helpful, and it keeps you used to that over the off season.
Julian, I'm going to quote you to my wife to explain why once we get the unlimited high-speed internet, I need GT6. I appreciate that right there. I've got it on tape.
Oh,
recorded here. So basically you're saying, can you focus with the pressure? And that's just getting you more practice. I mean, it makes total sense that more situations you put yourself in under pressure and get the practice of performing. It's okay, I can do this.
Not to mention, if you do end up getting the game, the other, it's definitely the mental aspects and also just your reaction time. You can keep your reaction super sharp on that game. I don't know if you've heard about it or whatever. They have this car. It's the Red Bull X 2010, which is essentially a futuristic Formula car. Hits 300 miles an hour in what must be 10 seconds. You try and run one of those on a regular road course, you're sweating and your back is stuck to the seat because it's soaked, and it's crazy because you're trying to keep up with this thing, and it'll react faster than your brain can. So you run cars like that, or you can even run faster touring cars or anything like that on tight tracks, and it does keep your mind sharp as far as keeping those reactions very precise.
I like it. I'm looking forward. At some point, I'll get that. So I hope. My wife could be like, "Hey, why are you gaming?" Although actually years ago, I was like, maybe I should get this to practice. Then we moved someplace where we have limited high speed, so I'd have to pay through the nose right now to do that. So we'll wait a few more months. But no, I appreciate that. So anything else? Track time any good? Did you ever do F125 very much?
Well, I transitioned. I run shifters, whether it be kind of screwing around at local events and things like that. But I also ran the 2014 Pro Solo season in someone else's shifter cart, Mike Klein's shifter cart, and that is definitely something I recommend that everyone tries at some point. And ultimately, it's one of the best purchases as far as the autocrossing community. If you're trying to get into the sport, it's one of the safest, safe as far as safe investment purchases you can make, because when you look at it, you're buying. You never have to buy one new, because there's so many people that buy one, they think they're going to get into it, or they think they're really going to like it. They either don't find time for it, or their kids don't really like it. You can find the used market. You can find great carts for cheap prices. You can pick up a decent shifter cart for $3,000-$4,000. Tires, $200 a set. So you could buy 4 of those in a season, and it costs less than the Hoosiers we put on the Miata. Not to mention they're ridiculously fast. They're a lot of fun. So definitely one of your best bangs for the buck in solo. And not to mention, I mean, you have an easy outlet to go take it out on a karting track where you can run into stuff if something does happen. I mean, the parts are cheap, everything else, but you can get a lot of seat time in shifter carts on the track, whereas cars, you're taking a lot of risk if you're putting your $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 street car out on the track. I'm personally not a proponent of that, just because if I'm going to be out on the track, I want full safety gear, everything else, just to ensure that I'm not putting my life on the line to get some seat time out there. Doesn't matter if it's an HPD, but
wise words. You are like 40 years old. You've just aged very quickly in what wisdom that is.
I've been around this crowd too long.
Yeah. That's one thing that scares me with my kids. I'm like, all they see me doing is racing. I'm like, I used to play basketball and hockey. I'm like, I've got to start doing some more things, because all they think is like, I should drive a kart. I should get out here and go and play and race. I'm like, oh, let's do several things. But I could literally see that if I don't do that, they only think, oh, Dad likes to autocross race. He likes to go to parking lots.
that is definitely one thing. While I would not trade what I've done in my life so far for anything. I think that being in motorsports has been, I have the best parents ever, honestly. I mean, I hear that all the time, and I definitely believe it, because I've gotten so many opportunities. I got to be out on the track in a Miata at 13 years old. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful. That being said, along with what you're saying, is I didn't get the chance. I'm going into the second semester of my senior year in high school, and I've never done a high school sport. I could pick one up pretty easily, I think, but the biggest thing is that time commitment. From March until October, I'm going to be busy either wrenching on a car or out teaching schools or going to events. And I started doing it a little more, and I was going to try and make a run for the golf team this year. But of course, that's a fall sport, and the first week of school I miss every year for nationals. So I knew that the coach would not like if I just decided to say bye for 10 days, and they're going to be practicing for 8 of them. So the time commitment definitely doesn't work out. So I would say I've missed out on stuff like that if I didn't think that it's not nearly as much fun as the racing stuff. So
yeah. And when we think about things, what are you more likely to go pro at? I'm not sure one's better than the other, but you have just as good of a chance probably racing, and anybody, no matter their size, does, I'd say, racing compared to a lot of the other sports out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm too short to play basketball. I'm too small to play football. You know, that's just the way it is. But I tell you, I mean, when we looked into it and we were running on the track, there's just it's such an unrealistic expectation. And if you can save your kids from the trouble of trying to make a career out of it, it seems like there's just so. I mean, we know there's so much money involved in it, and it's unbelievable how many people you see on TV are actually paying to be there. So it's definitely not the industry you want to get into, but it's a great hobby that you'll be able to do the rest of your life. And I know surely I will be doing that. So.
Yeah, the amount of people, I mean, just the people I get to meet across the country now doing little videos, people are like, hey, you do those coaching videos on autocross on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, that's so helpful. And all I say is, look ahead, look over there. So you mentioned the CSP Miata is for sale, meaning what will you be driving this year?
We're still trying to figure things out, a lot of things up in the air. I'm going to school next year. Undetermined where I'll be. I might be staying here in Maryland. I might be in Texas, or I might be in Kansas. Not sure, but as far as next season goes, if the CSP car sells, we're looking for something in the street class. A lot easier to just maintain while I'm gone, because I know my dad wants something a little more lower maintenance. But we'll see. It might be a couple of things we're looking at, maybe B Street, E Street, something like that. So we'll see. But it all depends on.
If you could drive anybody's car or any car, what would be the choice car to drive this next year?
Just absolutely anything.
Anything.
I would love to jump. I mean, I think it's the holy grail class, if you will. I would love to jump into SSR to really put my skills to the test. It seems like they get a ton of attention, and I definitely like to see how I'd stack up there.
Which car?
Well, you can look at it a bunch of different ways. It seems like everybody in there is in the Corvettes. I know my dad, he's always wanted a Lotus Elise, which I don't see why that wouldn't be, why that wouldn't be a decent choice for SSR still. And of course the GT3s are incredible cars. I'd love to get my hands on one of those at some point. But
if I get one, I'll let you drive. Actually, I have a text I need to respond to asking if I want to drive one this season sometimes. And I'm like, don't tempt me to get in fast cars. I'm going to focus on a slow Civic.
Yeah, it'll definitely be tough. going back to, I mean, I do drive them at the schools and everything, but leaving the CSP car is it's incredible because like we were talking about, it's 2,050 pounds, makes 140 wheel horsepower, and it sticks like glue. It's 275 Hoosiers underneath a 2,000 pound car. It's incredible. So it's definitely going to be hard to leave something like that, but it's definitely the best for our situation right now. And, hopefully it'll go to a good owner that'll take care of it, and we'll still see it out at national events.
Well, watching those things, Scott Fraser driving one out in California for years, I was like, oh my goodness! Like, do you even lift? Are you using the brakes very much of anywhere? I'm just amazed at how that thing can fly through a course.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. You wouldn't. While the cars are older and the steering ratio might be a little slower than what they are now, it is incredible how well those cars stick, and everything happens almost instantly. Like I said, despite being a 20-year-old 250,000-mile chassis Miata, something like that.
Oh, so you mentioned colleges, FSAE. Do they give you scholarships for that? Are you recruited?
I wish. I'm hoping, and there's still time that I might be able to work something out, but it doesn't seem like that's emphasized in the schools enough to be handing out any sort of scholarships for FSAE. But I definitely did use that to kind of determine what schools I'm interested in, because a great program there can definitely benefit into getting into the automotive industry as a career. But yeah, I've looked at some different programs, and that's why the schools I am applying to, and I've been accepted already in the University of Kansas and University of Texas Arlington. Both we see out at nationals every year. So and then University of Maryland, I'm waiting to hear back from. All have really solid programs, and we'll see where I end up. Definitely looking at costs. So if there are any FSAE professors listening or anything like that, there's still some persuasion that can happen, right?
But I like you noting that literally, I as a parent never thought about that. Yet I know Gabe went to CSU, and he ended up working at Honda, and that once again probably helped having that on the resume. FSAE, I learned this and this, and I got to meet so many people in the industry because of that. That's a good point for parents. If your kids are into any aspect of this, FSAE programs can help them learn for a future career. Maybe they're not going to be a pro driver, as we mentioned, because of money concerns or the reality of the amount of money it takes. But once again, that can be a big stepping stone into your career.
Oh, most definitely. I hear it over and over and over again from people within the program and people that have gotten great jobs. I've talked to, look at JT McClintock, who he was up with Michigan, and he's ran the shifter carts. He's been autocrossing with us since he was a kid. And he's got a great job with Continental now. So there's definitely a lot of connections you can make. And more importantly, I hear all the companies that fund these FSAE teams, they want the people that have had hands-on experience. Sure, you can get a degree from sitting in engineering classes, but when you can actually put those skills to work and actually apply them somewhere, that's really going to be more important to getting the best people for your jobs, I would think.
Yeah, it shows that they're really into that, which I think is the biggest key for a career. I mean, my other podcast is literally like, hey, get a job, work for yourself. Don't get a job with somebody else. Create your own job, your own business in your passion. So that lines up that, hey, these guys and gals are coming out of college with this experience. They did extra. They wanted to do this. I mean, that's a win-win situation right there.
Right, and the experience, I'm really hoping it pays off, and obviously I think only time will tell, but I've really been focusing on, as I go through school, and I've been a good student all the way through middle school, high school, but on top of that, I really do prioritize the experiences I get to have, because at the end of the day, it seems like these companies, and they want to see experience, and that's why, sure, I'm missing a week when I go out to solo nationals, but another way you can look at it as, my parents say this all the time, 20 years from now, am I going to remember that week of school that I actually missed, or am I going to remember when I went to Solo Nationals? So I think as far as your overall life experiences go, I think that's really important and can benefit you in your career as well. At least I hope so.
It's crazy. I'm a parent now. I missed half a day of high school total, but yet I'm already, my kids are only 5 and 7, and I'm like, it seems like they're going to school a whole bunch already. I'm like, wow, I think I'm going to pull them out of time. I'm just like, really? This seems like a lot of school. I realize, yes, they're learning, but it's already getting to me like, wow, they're there all day long, where the older one is. I'm like, all day. Right. And he's gone, last year he made 3 or 4 trips with me to Pro Solos. So he's already getting used to the car rides to California.
Oh, good.
All the different places. He's like, when are we getting there? I'm like, tomorrow. Oh, okay. So I keep thinking, like, we've got a cart sitting here for you now, so believe me, you could have fun here as well. So I'm excited to see him, if nothing else, the confidence it builds, that he'll get to do something that most of his friends aren't doing. It's something that he can go, wow.
You said he's 7, right? So
yep.
He's turning 8 for this 2016 season, right?
No, he won't turn 8 till next November. So he literally probably needs to get a lot of experience in that FJC. He took it and he started sliding around some, which I was impressed that he would actually like turn the wheel and kick it, sliding it, and keep going. I was like, oh, wow, a little more confident than I thought.
Okay,
so
there you go.
He's easing into it. I've been the opposite of the dad I thought our parents I wish I had to push me into sports. I have not been doing that. I've been like, nope, it's hurtful to me going, oh, I want to push them. But I really want them to love something to do it. So I have not been like, you're going to get in this cart and go drive. It's more so, oh, you asked for a cart? Okay, we borrowed a cart. Here you go.
Sure, yeah. I mean, get him to try all sorts of things, and he'll pick something to stick with. I know once I got into the carts, I did baseball maybe a couple of seasons, and I did soccer maybe before I even started doing the carts, 3 or 4 years old. And I've never really been attached to it like I am with the driving, for sure. It's just something I really, really love to do, and I think the rest is just you can't even compare. At least that's just me.
Yep. I like speed. Yet, obviously, you don't seem like an adrenaline junkie in that you're like, I want a car on the track that's got safety equipment. I don't want to wreck a $30,000 car. You're very, very level-headed. That's nice to see. Your parents, I'm not sure I credit them for that, but that's smart.
Yeah, they've talked a lot of sense for sure. But as far as I don't know if it's from the karting, but the rest of the sports that I really participate in are definitely non-traditional. I know, like, we spend our winters, unfortunately, we're getting off to a slow start. I'm usually snowboarding at this time of year all the time. But we definitely do that. We do a lot of that. And also, I know John Zinenbos got me into the indoor rock climbing, and I know I see all the time PJ Corrales is posting stuff on Facebook. He's doing that stuff too, and I really recommend, if you haven't tried that yet. It's a lot of fun, super challenging, keeps you in really good shape. That's something you can do year round too if you have something like that in your area.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't done that now for probably a decade or so. I am 6'4", so it makes it kind of easy, although still the strength is always helpful. But that's something else good. Just let your kids see, like, hey, let's go over and climb the wall, because most kids love to climb.
Yeah, exactly. So trying different sorts of things like that. I know those are the things that I've gotten attached to, and I do that stuff all the time. But
and it seems like the autocross community has a big influence on you as well with that, for example. Oh
yeah. You get introduced to all sorts of new things that I know I wouldn't be doing this climbing stuff if it wasn't for John or a few other people that I know that do it regularly. So you definitely, I absolutely love that, the amount of people you get to know, and personally, that's why part of the reason I feel comfortable looking far away for schools, looking in Texas and Kansas, because wherever I go, I know I've got friends out there that I can call on for help if I need it or anything like that, because we know people all around the country. It's fantastic.
And that's interesting too. You know so many adults, let's put it, like 10, 20, 30 years older than you, because you autocross so much.
Oh yeah. I enjoy it's kind of ruined me a little bit, I guess. I enjoy my times out at the autocrosses on the weekends more than I might enjoy at a typical high school party. It's just a lot of the stuff that I don't enjoy those kinds of things. I enjoy the time I spend out with all the adults talking, because the big thing is that a lot of people my age seems like it's not the same as maybe it used to be, but there's not a lot of people that are super interested in the cars. I saw it a little more, that people ask me more questions and things like that once they start getting your driver's license. But for the most part, if I want to talk about some things I share common interests with, it's going to be out at the autocrosses.
Yeah, good point. Plus, also, once again, you're networking. You've got a bigger network when you go to look for a job through the autocross community than most anybody else can even imagine. Because you know so many different people in so many different fields in reality. Oh, yeah, it's so helpful. And I've been able to ask, well, what do you do for a living? Do you enjoy it? And I can kind of get better ideas. I know, like you said, there's so many people that you know from being a part of this sport, and I really hope that I can use it to my advantage to pick up some opportunities in the future. I really am happy about being around the autocross community my whole life. I would, like I said, I wouldn't if I had the chance to do it over again, I wouldn't do it any differently. Yeah, Julian. Julian, this has been a great time spent with you. You had good tips from JA to JB to even cars, to think about setup and how you look at things, obviously from your coaching experience as well as just your experience. I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. Yeah, it was good getting to talk to you, Kinch, and hopefully I'll get to see you in person sometime over the 2016 season. I'm sure it'll happen, although I probably will not drive to D.C. ever again for a pro because, as you said, it's a sloped lot, and I hated it, and it's a long drive. But maybe. We have a pro this year. I will say, while we may have a little bit of a home team advantage, it definitely. I was talking about the other day with some people from the region. It is funny when we go to, whether it be Toledo or Wilmington or Lincoln, and people are like, well, this slab of concrete is a little off camber, and I look at it and I'm like, really, off camber? It's you haven't been to DC if you think that's off camber. Oh, no kidding. I mean, comparing even DC down to San Diego has some slopes in places, but I just remember when we did that pro, we're up in like a bowl or something, and I kept sliding around, and it went from asphalt to maybe different asphalt back to the other colored asphalt. I was like, it was just so foreign. And after driving 26 hours and then realizing I just sucked, and I'm driving 26 hours. So, hey, let people know how they can contact you. What's your blog site, Facebook, etc.? Yeah, sure. I'm on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow me and all that stuff. I also I haven't kept up with it as much recently, but hopefully I'll be getting some more articles. I've been doing some writing, the studentdriver.blogspot.com. I write about some of the cool stuff I get to drive, whether it be instructing or stuff we see that shows up at the autocrosses. So I'm always trying to put a fair, honest opinion on some of those cars. I know I always read, whether it be some of the big publications, and I'm like, there's obviously a bias in there somewhere. So I try and keep it as fair as I can, getting honest thoughts on these cars. So you can go ahead and check that out. Gotcha. I'll put all that in the show notes as well. I'll make sure I have everything from you linked in, because I know one is like Julian Garfield Racing on Facebook. So we'll link in each of the accounts you want linked in there. And any questions in the future, I might be calling you back for another interview. Hopefully people have some more questions, some more thoughts, and definitely we'll meet up at some point this year. All right. I look forward to it. Julian, it was great. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.